Alright, so there were a couple of more changes to the game that I didn't cover yesterday that pertain to the jungle. I already had 4 videos out, so I don't want to post a 5th one, but I'm fixing that now. I'll be going over some changes I mentioned yesterday as a refresher, but I'll be focusing on the huge jungle changes Riot is making for the mid-season jungle. First things first, Devour has been removed from the jungle lineup. Satan Devour's passive has been given to Guinsoo's Rage Blade, and instead we have seen the return of Madrid's Blood Razor in enchant form. This makes it so there is no specific farmer jungle enchant, and instead we have a new anti-tank focused enchant. Personally, this change is a good one. Satan Devour was a trap a lot of players fell into, and it was an item that could never really see equal balance across divisions. It simply wasn't a healthy item, although I feel it could have been if Riot didn't try to make it usable by everyone. Blood Razor not needing to be stacked also allows you to consider not having to farm all game as an option. It also will be able to maintain its value, which is important for junglers who want to pick this up as the game goes on. Its power depends entirely on how the flow of the game changes with the mid-season changes though. If you still really miss Satan Devour and want to obtain it at some point, then buy yourself a Guinsoo's Rage Blade. At the very least, this means you have to make a gold commitment to obtain it, and you can't combine it with the old Guinsoo's for the uberness that it used to be. I uploaded a video yesterday about the dragon changes and people were very mixed about it. On one hand, it is very exciting, but on another, the RNG element of it could be worrisome. Of course, this could be avoided if Riot just gave Dragon its gold back from before, but we'll be stuck with the elemental dragons for a while. I personally like them, but I do understand the fears of RNG and snowballing. I argue that this can easily be balanced by having either low values that only increase to a fearsome number when you get more dragons or the Elder Dragon, or diminishing returns if you continuously get the same buff from the dragons. Some fear that if the dragons that spawn don't suit certain team compositions, that it will nerf those compositions. I argue that it would not because of the simple fact that people are forgetting these dragons will be forcing fights to occur, and that can be a reward unto itself. Even if a team may not benefit as much as their opponents from a certain element, they'd still likely contest it just to keep it away from the enemy team. Hell, a new strategy could evolve in that a bad dragon spawn for a team spawns and their opponent fights to keep that spawn up in order to prevent a better spawn from ever seeing play and to make the Elder Dragon's future buff less impactful. However, one change to the jungle is one I cannot believe they're actually considering. The Void Herald is receiving a super buff and could potentially break the game. I understand why they're doing it, and you may understand it immediately when you learn of its effects, but honestly it sounds pretty goofy. Basically, Rift Herald can only be killed once and it will never respawn. If you kill it, then it will drop the Void super buff, which lasts 20 damn minutes and persists through death. It will give you damage reduction versus opponents if you're alone, so it's not meant to be for marksman support duo, and it's likely an attempt to discourage lane swapping. It also gives you a passive that gives you stacks with each attack you make, and at 100 stacks you discharge for some bonus magic damage. Now, what will truly make or break this is the numbers attached to that thing. The effect unto itself isn't all that bad, but the duration of it can be stupid, especially since you can only obtain it once. If it's too strong, it will pretty much dictate what happens in top lane, and if it's too weak, then no one will care. Now, this change is one I do not exactly agree with. This is a change that is very obviously directed towards the competitive scene since they do a lot of that double jungle stuff, and it will help junglers not get completely screwed for being the whipping boy of the team. However, in non-competitive where junglers just do their own thing, this will have an insane effect. You can reach level 5 and 6 way quicker than ever before. It basically removed the 2 extra minutes you needed for certain junglers to reach level 6. Basically put, jungle items will grant you more experience, and this is pretty much utterly insane and it can possibly break the game. I understand that it will help level 6 junglers become competitive again as it allows them to beeline for their ultimates a lot easier, but it can strongly discourage ganking as quick ganks won't produce as much power as simply farming. Of course, the catch-up mechanic in the jungle will definitely help if you're screwing around, but that only becomes enabled if the camps are actually cleared. This is a very dangerous thing for Riot to do, since experience changes of any kind to anything have always carried a huge risk of utterly blowing the game up. I hope that if this doesn't work out, that Riot reverts it without pussyfooting around like they usually do. The last change is that your blue buff and red buff will now give a global notification during the final minute before it respawns. Basically, the enemy team, whether they cleared the vision on the camp or saw you kill it, will know when your buffs respawn. I figure this is supposed to go hand in hand with the latest buffs they made to the buffs, but at the same time it seems like a needless change. Yes, they want more objective fighting, but too much of it can make the game frustrating to play. Ironically, it can also make objective contesting less dynamic since both players will know the other one has the buff in their sights and will ward up to defend, and the attacker may not bother because it will likely be warded and difficult to invade. For most people, it will simply be frustrating to know that the enemy can track you without much effort now. Currently, without the timers, guessing the respawn of a buff camp wrong wastes a lot of time and puts you at a significant risk of being killed or simply ousted from the jungle. Simply put, this change will likely not achieve what Riot intends for it to achieve, or at least in the way it wants it to be achieved. It will most likely be frustrating, and I for one would rather not have this change be put in the game. Either way, there's a lot more changes being made to the game, not all of them pertaining to the jungle, but you can catch up on those on Surrender at 20 or Reign of Gaming or on other YouTubers like Red Mercy, who's likely posting a ton of videos and this kind of stuff. There's a lot of mage updates, a lot of range carry updates, a lot of item updates, just updates in general. It's mid-season, crazy things are going to happen.